How you doing, folks? My name is Jeremy Fox Miller, and you are watching Sly Fox Broadcasting, and this is episode 2 of the Sly Fox Podcast. Tonight, I'm going to review the week in college football and tell you what all happened, the upsets, the heartbreak, and the close games. Let's go with the heartbreak first. We had 3 games in the top 25 that were not able to be played due to COVID-19 reasoning. Number 8, Cincinnati did not play Tulsa due to COVID-19. Oklahoma State and Baylor did not play due to COVID-19. And the other big one that did not play because of COVID-19, Florida, looking to bounce back after being beaten by Texas A&M, going up against LSU. They are not playing due to COVID-19 because half of their team had COVID-positive tests. And then it was reported today that coach Dan Mullen from the Gators tested positive for COVID-19. And we wish Dan and the rest of the Gators and everybody else a speedy recovery from this COVID-19. We are all with you during this pandemic. So, what happened during the week? Why am I doing a podcast about this? There were some big games. Let's get to them. Number 1, Clemson. That was not a big game. It was not. Trevor Lawrence balled out like it was no problem. Trevor Lawrence led Clemson to a 73-7 defeat over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Clemson put the most points up in an ACC game in 100 years. Let's do this again. 100 years. That's insane. But Georgia Tech did put a blemish on Trevor Lawrence. He was 13 passes away from getting the all-time most passes thrown without an interception record in the ACC. That was held by Russell Wilson from 2008-2009, and he was 13 passes short, and he threw a pick against Georgia Tech, the only blemish against Trevor Lawrence. So when you're Trevor Lawrence, and you're projected to be the number 1 draft pick in this year's draft, and you are 366 passes completed without throwing a pick, and you end up throwing a pick in this game. If you're the Jets, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be the number 1 team this year, sorry, New York, just saying. You're looking at Trevor Lawrence and you're saying, Sam Darnold can't do that to save his life. 366 passes without throwing a pick? That's insane. We definitely must sign that guy. So, 73-7, Clemson, number 1 team, probably going to stay number 1 because of that absolute trounce in the ACC. But then the big game that we had, mind you, I'm a little biased. I'm an Alabama fan, so bear with me on this. We had number 3 Georgia, led by Kirby Smart, going up against number 2 Alabama, live at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. And it was a raucous 20% crowd due to COVID-19. But they sure as hell made their voices heard. Going into the half, it was 24-20. Georgia just scored. Stetson Bennett IV decided to find Jermaine Burton for a 5-yard touchdown pass in the back of the end zone, making it 24-17. 30 seconds left. Mac Jones led the Tide down to give 1 second left on the clock after a spike that was reviewed. And Will Reichert hit a 52-yard field goal, which is a career high for him, to make it 24-20. Okay? So you're looking at this and saying, okay, Georgia's at the lead in the half. Wait a second, this sounds pretty familiar. Let's flash back. The national championship game, Georgia and Alabama. Georgia led at the half. Alabama scored right before the half. Alabama ended up winning that game in overtime. National title. Georgia against Alabama 2 years ago in the SEC championship game. Georgia led at the half. Alabama came back and beat Georgia. I'm pretty sure that means that, yep, that was another blown lead by Georgia. So you go into this 24-20 at the half, you're thinking, oh, it can't happen again, can it? Can it happen again? Stetson Bennett the fourth was doing pretty good. Mac Jones was doing great for Alabama. The defenses were pretty good. It happened again, folks. It did. Jalen Waddle with a 90-yard touchdown pass from Mac Jones made it 27-24. After a Stetson Bennett the fourth interception, Najee Harris took it in for 2 yards to make it a 34-24 game. And then after another Stetson Bennett the fourth interception, which he threw the ball and literally there was nobody near him except a crimson and white jersey for 20 yards. He threw the pick. Devontae Smith, who I call the Georgia Bulldog Killer, if you don't remember, Tua Tagovailoa found Devontae Smith for that overtime win and that national title. He caught a 13-yard touchdown pass, and mind you, Devontae Smith is the number one wideout coming into the draft this year. He definitely practiced his NFL catch because he got 1 foot down and he dragged that second one. He's ready for the NFL. That made it 41-24, and Alabama, number 2 in the country, knocked off the Georgia Bulldogs, who looked impressive against Tennessee. Alabama coming off their win against Ole Miss. Just not enough for the Bulldogs this year. Stetson Bennett the fourth, 18 of 40 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Just a good game by Stetson Bennett the fourth. Just those 3 picks. One was just a fluke. The other 2 were they were bad. And Georgia suffered because of it. Because all 3 interceptions that was thrown by Stetson Bennett, guess what, folks? Bama put it in this end zone for 6 and a field goal. Mac Jones, 24-32, 417, 4 touchdowns and a fluke pick, which we won't talk about that. Rushing-wise, Zamir White for Georgia, 10 carries, 57 yards and a touchdown. He did good on the ground. 57 yards, that's not bad for a good star running back. Najee Harris for Alabama, 31 carries, 152 yards, and a touchdown. Receiving-wise, it was... oh, my God, I can't do it again. James Cook, the third, sorry. He led Georgia's receiving corps as a running back, mind you, with 4 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. That one touchdown was an 82-yard bomb by Stetson Bennett the fourth to him, torching Alabama's defense horribly, which is a very bad thing because Alabama's secondary has been our one thorn in my side, and it got back to us again. Alabama's receiving corps, 2 guys with 160 in the books. Devontae Smith, 11 catches, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns for the Georgia Bulldog Killer. Jalen Waddle, who is the fastest man in college football right now, 6 catches, 161 yards, including that 90-yard touchdown pass from Mac Jones, and he's got the 1. Another name to look for, I don't know if it's going to be the rest of this year, look for him next year, but John Mechie III, he had 3 catches for 50 yards, but 1 touchdown. Against A&M, he had over 150, 160. Watch for number 8 in crimson and white. So then you had 2 and 3 go that one. Miami at number 13, they defeated Pitt 31-19. The only notable stat about that game was going into that game, Pitt quarterback Kenny Pickett was leading college football in passing yards. He did not play due to an ankle injury. So they started another kid, a kid by the name of Joey Yellen, a true freshman. And he didn't do too bad. 22 for 46, 277, and a touchdown. So, I mean, no picks. That's always a good thing for a freshman. But Miami decided that they were going to go into and beat the Pitt Panthers. Then we had the 2 upsets in the SEC, and these ones, They are setting teams back. Let's just say this. These two teams both have lost to Georgia, by the way, in successive weeks. Auburn, coming off of a loss against Georgia 2 weeks ago, and a absolute nail-biter against Arkansas, got defeated by South Carolina 30-22. Bo Nix for the Tigers was 24-47, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. One of those 3 interceptions was a pick 6. Not very good. Colin Hill for South Carolina, he didn't have very big numbers. 15-24, 144 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But the pass that he did get was an absolute beauty to Shy Smith. And if you absolute play of the day, it's going to be a Sports Center top 10. I wouldn't be surprised if it's number 2. The only one that I could see being maybe number 1 is in Korea. A guy caught a ball and rickrolled the batter. A whole nother story, but it was funny as hell. So that was one loss. Then, like I said, both teams lost to Georgia. Tennessee, coming off of a big loss to Georgia and looking pretty sad, have decided that they did not want to show up today, and that Jared Garantano, who has been pretty good going up into that Georgia game, did not look good at all. He actually got benched. He looked really bad. Garantano was 14-21, 88 yards and 2 picks. Now, mind you, those 2 picks were pretty costly because they were a 41-yard pick 6 to Kelvin Joseph, which, if you watch the highlight, he was covered. His receiver was covered, and he threw the ball, and Joseph just picked it out of the air and took off. And then the second one was a 85-yard interception return for a touchdown by a linebacker who made it to the 3-yard line and finally had to dive in order to get there. The one touchdown for the Vols was on a Ty Chandler 4-yard run. Nothing good for Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt, after the game, said that he's not sure who he's going to get to start next week against, I'm believing, if I'm not mistaken, next week's game in Tennessee is, oh yes, it is. It's the 3rd Saturday in October against Alabama. So, good luck, Vols. Just saying. So there was that game. And then there was number 4, Notre Dame, who came off a big win against Florida State, humbled the Noles. They go in back to South Bend and have a scrappy Louisville team. And they only won by not even a touchdown. They won by 5 points. It was 12-7. 2 field goals in the first half for the Irish. Going into the third quarter, Louisville scored on a 1-yard pass from Malik Cumming to Marshawn Ford. That made it 7-6. And then Ian Book, who has been Notre Dame's savior, on a 13-yard run. They went for a 2, didn't get it, ended the game 12-7. Ian Book was 11-19 for 106 yards. Big name, big numbers. Not. Malik Cunningham for Louisville, 16-19, 132 yards and a touchdown. A little bit better, but Louisville at 1-4, they're not doing much. But they came into South Bend, and they were looking for the upset. They were that close. Notre Dame, number 4 in the country, they are now going next week to face a Pitt team that don't know if they're going to have Kenny Pickett. But it's 2 weeks from now that we're worried about if you're an Irish fan, and that is Clemson going into South Bend on a night game. Can the Irish unseat the Tigers? Not after that game. I mean, that was a scrappy game, but I don't see it happening. Not after Clemson's been balling out way too much. So then you had Texas A&M, who came off a big win against Florida, trying to get another big win against Mississippi State, which, if notable, Mississippi State was the one team that when LSU was, actually ranked, they knocked off the Tigers and actually made them look humbled. Mississippi State, since that win, have lost 3 straight. 3 straight. One of these losses was to Texas A&M today. 28-14 was the final for the Aggies. They were led by Kellen Mond, who had 13-23, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an INT. The Bulldogs, they were led by Will Rogers, what looks like a true freshman. 15 of 18, 120 yards, and 1 touchdown. Just a absolute hurtful thing. The one pass by Kellen Mond, or the one interception by Kellen Mond was a pick 6 for Emmanuel Forbes. But other than that, it was all Aggies. Texas A&M, they go next week to face a scrappy Arkansas team who got a big win against Ole Miss, and we'll talk about that one next. But sticking to the top 25, then you had Virginia Tech knocking off Boston College 40-14. But then you had your 2 upsets. You had Auburn losing to South Carolina. Upset. Big one. That wasn't in the top 10, though. Then you had Kentucky beating Tennessee up like a redheaded stepchild. That wasn't in the top 10, though. This next one, that was in the top 10. Jordan Travis and the Florida State Seminoles, after being humbled by Notre Dame, absolutely destroyed North Carolina up until the second half. North Carolina were down so much as 31-7. It was the biggest deficit in North Carolina history. They were trying to come back from it. They fell just short. Jordan Travis led the Seminoles to a 31-28 win. And on top of that, Jordan Travis, halfway through the fourth quarter, took a helmet to the shoulder. And his left shoulder was literally just laying there. This kid was playing with one arm, essentially. And led the Noles, who are now 2-3. Mind you, before this, they were absolutely decimated by Miami. They were absolutely decimated by Notre Dame. Their one win before this North Carolina game was against Jacksonville State. And that was only because Travis came in the second half and saved them. So, big go out. I mean, this is a team that lost to Georgia Tech. Not good. But, besides the point, Jordan Travis led the Noles to a 31-28 win over number 5 North Carolina. Mike Norvell got a big statement win as the head coach of the Noles. Travis ended up 8 of 19, 191 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 absolute beautiful interception on Jordan Travis by Trey Morrison Jr. from North Carolina. He absolutely just picked this ball out of the one hand and just took it down. Absolute beautiful interception. That was the big upsets. That was the big ones. That was the huge, Auburn going down. Tennessee going down. And then the big one, of course, Florida State knocking off the number 5 team in the country. So there will definitely be a little bit of a shakeup in that 5 and under bracket. Now, Wednesday, Coastal Carolina knocked off the Louisville Lafayette Raging Cajuns, who were 21st ranked in the country. They won 30-27, which is a big win for the Chanticleers. Friday, in overtime, it took number 17 SMU to beat Tulane 37-34. And then other game on Friday was number 14 BYU, who is led by the reported second best quarterback in the NFL draft, and Zach Wilson. Well, Zach Wilson balled out. Also broke a record for BYU, and his top receiver broke a record for BYU. Zach Wilson was 25 of 35 for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also had 9 carries for 40 yards on the ground and led the Cougars in rushing. His top wideout, a Dax Milne Jr., he ended up with 9 of those 25 catches from Zach Wilson for 184 yards and 3 of Wilson's 4 touchdowns. Big day for Milne, who was career high there. Wilson, career high. So that was the week in college football in the top 25. Other notable games, like I said, I wanted to bring this up. Arkansas, who gave Auburn a run for their money. Nobody expected the Hogs to do much this year, but the Hogs are 2-2. They are 2-2, and they beat Ole Miss 33-21. The reason I'm bringing this game up, Felipe Franks, a Florida transfer, was 21-34, 244 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. The one, Matt Corral, who had a big game against Alabama last week, 20 of 38, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're thinking, okay, that's pretty bad. That's pretty good. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 interceptions. And out of those 6 interceptions, 1, 2 were pick sixes. Lane Kiffin is now 1-3 in Oxford. It's dirty. And then Missouri and Vanderbilt was supposed to play this week. They got postponed due to COVID-19 as well. So we go into the ACC. Other games in the ACC we had was North Carolina State ended up beating Duke 31-20. Big reason for that game was North Carolina State quarterback Devin Leary was carted off of his left leg in an air cast and most likely might not be coming back anytime soon. Apparently, Leary was sliding to end a quarterback run when Duke safety Lummy Young hit him in the head. Leary's ankle twisted awkwardly under him, stayed down in the field for several minutes. Young was ejected for targeting, and I would not be surprised if he gets a nice ripping into from his coach, David Cutcliffe. Other notable games. Liberty University. They are 5-0 for the first time in school history as they defeated Syracuse 38-21. Now, why is this a big thing? Because it's a no-name team, but they're 5-0. Liberty has faced some big names, too. Liberty has knocked off Western Kentucky. They have knocked off Florida International University, Louisiana Monroe. I believe that's North Alabama. And then Syracuse. Mind you, Western Kentucky, Florida International, and Syracuse, those 3 teams, they have all been in bowl games last year. So they're big names. Liberty has a chance to run the table. They have to go against Southern Mississippi. Then they've got number 23 Virginia Tech. Then they've got a Western Carolina team that apparently hasn't played a game at all. Then they go against North Carolina State, which we just mentioned. Leary out for probably the year in the air cast. And then they've got the biggest game in their season and what could make them an undefeated team or a non-undefeated team. It's against a 4-0 Coastal Carolina team that just started their football program either this year or last year. Insane. Hopefully the Liberty does pretty good. I'd love to see them in a bowl game. Let's go to, obviously there's no Big Ten or Pac-12 yet. Big 12 games, there was only one, and that was West Virginia beating up on Kansas. Notable fact in that game was Les Miles did not travel with the Jayhawks. He was tested positive for COVID-19. So again, hopefully a speedy recovery for Mr. Miles and the Kansas team. Content, please leave a like and a subscribe on the YouTube page. Shoot me a like and a comment on my Twitter, Facebook, and or Instagram, all at Sly Fox Broad. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and have a good night.